Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I'll let you guys start coming on. We have a special guest today. It's Megan Dahlman, and we're going to be figuring out how do we eliminate back pain and hip pain. So I'll let you guys start coming on. Hello, good morning. There you are. Okay, Megan, I'm going to invite you on right now. We have Megan Dahlman with us today. Let's see if I can get her on. Okay, I sent you a link there. Yes.
Ta-da!
Hi, Megan.
Hi, Darnell. How are you today?
I'm really great. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really good. There's always that moment of like, is it going to work? Like, is the live, are we going to connect?
Yeah. Welcome to my world. Every
Right.
Saturday and Sunday. It's like, okay, let's hope this goes through. Okay, so everybody, let me introduce to you. I'm like in the middle of getting my tea and stuff situated. This is Megan Dahlman, everybody. She has been training for 17 years, and she is one of the most sought after trainers for women over 40. Hello, 55 here. So we are needing your help. And with all the pain that comes with, and sometimes there's not pain, but you know, just in midlife, our bodies aren't moving and feeling the way that they did when they were in their 20s. And so we're here to talk about how do we, you know, handle the back pain, the hip pains, all these little pains, and how do we prevent injuring these areas. Correct, Megan?
Oh, yeah. Back pain in particular, it's crazy to think that there are 540 million adults right now that are suffering from back pain, like at this moment in time. And there's this funny thing about back pain and also hip pain is that we just kind of start to believe this lie that this is just the normal part of aging. Like, oh, here it comes, here's the back pain. And it starts to turn into a joke.
Right.
Like this is just something I'm going to have to live with. And when that's our mentality, we don't seek a solution. We don't like become, what I like to say, an active participant in our like healing process. We just kind of learn to live with it. And what we don't realize is what that chronic kind of in the background pain that we're dealing with and living with on a daily basis impacts our lives so much more than we can think. And it really has a cascade effect on so many things. We stop moving less. So we start losing muscle mass, which is, as you know, like one of the most like detrimental things to our overall functionality as we age.
100%. If we lose muscle mass, you guys, which starts happening in our mid 30s, we start losing muscle mass every year. And what happens is when fat starts infiltrating the muscle, known as sarcopenia, it affects everything. It's really difficult to lose weight after that, but our metabolism drops. It just really affects everything. So there is this negative cascade of health effects that happen when we're injured, but also just we are more prone to injury with the loss of muscle mass, with the loss of flexibility that happens, that makes us more prone to injury. So it's twofold. One is, you know, we don't want to have that mindset of midlife means pain, because it doesn't have to be. No. But at the same time, we have to take care of our bodies in a different way to make sure that we're not injuring ourselves and we're remaining pain-free. So many things to do.
Yeah, it does just require more intentionality. You don't have young cells in your body anymore. Like things are just aging, and it requires some intentionality. It doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that it needs to be higher on your priority list. So like when you're younger, and if you didn't like eat vegetables for a day, it didn't like impact that much with your gut. Like you didn't notice as much. But now with just a slightly older structure that we're working with, you have to increase that intentionality and just be like, I'm not succumbing to like the inevitable, but I just have to bump this up on my priority list and just say there are some intentional things I might need to do to ensure that I keep the pain at bay.
Absolutely. And so what are some of those intentional things? Are we going
Yeah.
to move today a little bit? Are you going to
Oh, we
show?
can. Yeah, we could absolutely move today. I love that idea. Yeah, I like to say any type of pain that you have on your body, whether it's back pain, whether it's hip pain, whether it's like neck pain or ankle pain or whatever, it almost always boils down to what I call the PSF framework. And P stands for the posture or essentially the alignment of that area.
Okay.
If you have a spot on your body that's crooked, that's like tilted or twisted or torqued.
Like if you have a slight scoliosis.
Correct. Yeah, it does make it far more difficult to live a pain-free life, but there's a lot of things we do throughout the day where we are out of alignment, not in the sense that we think of, I need to go to the chiropractor to put me in, but like I sit with my legs crossed all the time. When I stand, I cock my hip out to the side from years ago holding babies on my hip, and I still have that habit. Just where we move about our life, maybe with a stronger side, which is super normal. We're asymmetrical beings.
Yeah.
But when we have this ongoing, like being out of posture or out of alignment, and it could be as simple as you go about your day with a super arched back. I know a lot of us women have that excessive lordosis in our low back. And so that's it's that posture piece.
It's this kind of sway back, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can see that, but
yeah. And what's interesting, and this is something funny, I think it's almost like ingrained in us as women, like we kind of grew up wanting to try to make our boobs look bigger.
It's the chin. I call it, and listen, this is my mantra. So here's I might lose some people here, but here's my mantra, because I think it does put me in a different thing. My mantra has always been chin up, tits out. You got this. Because it changes the way that you you look at things. But at the same time, as women, we're used to
we do that,
trying to do that.
And watch this for a second. So if we go about our day trying to think tits out, and I don't have very big ones, but if we think about that, like what that does is it thrusts your rib cage forward and it creates excessive lordosis at your low back. And that can be a big issue with that alignment piece I'm talking about. So regardless of where your breasts are sitting at the moment, we got to have your rib cage stacked. And I'm not wearing a very good shirt that shows this well, but you got to have your rib cage stacked right over your pelvis to make sure that you're not rib thrusting, because what that does at the low back, it just puts all of those facets in a super compressed position. And we think like, well, good posture is just squeezing my shoulders back. I got to have good posture. I got to squeeze my shoulders back. And that accomplishes that same thing, which is not good posture. So
Right.
I always like to think that good posture, think about good posture not starting at the shoulders, but it starts at your pelvis. And so think about having your pelvis, and maybe if I pull up a little bit, you can kind of see it better. So think about having your pelvis level, not slumped, not arched, but sitting level. Okay. And then we also want to make sure that your pelvis is not tilted one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So that is the foundation for good posture. And then we can move up from there to the rib cage.
Okay.
If your rib cage is flared, if it's tilted, torqued, or slumped too far under, then we're out of good alignment and we're going to have some issues. So we want to make sure that that rib cage stays stacked right above your pelvis, and then we breathe better. Then it impacts, then we have the capacity to develop better core strength because we have good alignment now. And then the very last thing that you think about is the shoulders. Shoulders should not be jammed back. They should just be like resting gently, kind of in the back, just relaxed. So that's kind of the essential structure of what good posture should be. So that's a major piece of the equation.
Which, Megan, that's very much like a tadasana in yoga, right? It's kind of the same thing. It's stacking the hip bones on top of the lower ribs, so you're not flared out,
right? And
you're not concave, but you're stacking. So you're pulling this in, you're stacking this, and then you're relaxing your shoulders down your back a little bit, right?
Correct. And yes, and you'll notice once you're in that position,
you can draw a far more effective breath. Like your breathing can be more effective. You can now work on the next piece of the pain equation is strength, specifically core strength.
Right.
And so once you're stacked properly like that, now we can work on good core strength. And let me just say, core is not just your abs. And you probably know that, but it's a good reminder that your core is this three-dimensional thing where it's your diaphragm at the top, it's your pelvic floor at the bottom, and then it is your abs. Yes, that's part of it, but it's also your back, those multifidi muscles that surround your spine.
Yeah.
And so if you're out of alignment, it's really difficult to accurately and just really target those core muscles well. And so when I say, like, how important is your core for eliminating back and hip pain, it's every bit as important as everything else. But when your core is not strong, your body will slide out of that good posture so much easier.
Right. We just had a question that says, Diamond and Willow says, how do you become conscious after so many years of poor posture? Because we get in that habit, right? So what is a way for us to be aware? I mean, we're aware of so many things in our surroundings. It's really difficult to stay completely aware of where we are, our proprioception, where we are in time and space, and what our bodies are doing.
Yeah.
Are there some tips on how to become more conscious of this after years of being in poor posture?
It's not an overnight thing. It's going to take practice and practice and practice, because right now your proprioception, how your brain is perceiving your posture, probably feels normal. And you moving into what's actually good posture probably feels out of whack to your brain. And so it's something that you have to just keep reminding it. Specifically during your workouts, like that's a great moment where your focus, your brain's focus is on your nerves, it's on your muscles, it's on your bones and joints. So you have this great environment where you've got this heightened awareness over what your body is doing. I do really recommend feedback from a mirror. I know that can be really frustrating for women to work out in front of a mirror, but it can be really helpful because you can get that visual feedback and be like, I feel like my back is neutral. I feel like my rib cage is neutral. But the moment you look in the mirror, you're like, whoa, 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 that's actually not what it felt like at all. And so you slide, you do a little bit of a pelvic tilt, you tuck in your rib cage a little bit, and you're like, okay, that's neutral. So it's just repetition, repetition, repetition of teaching your body that new patterning, and it will get there. But then the other two pieces, that core piece holds you there. And then the final piece is flexibility or mobility.
I love this because I've been preaching this for so long, that strength plus flexibility equals mobility. If you've got strength and you've got flexibility, which also both decreases as we age, that's when you can remain mobile and active throughout your entire lifespan. But those pieces, I've never seen it talked about like that in the PSF framework. I love that though. That's great.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like you could be attempting as hard as you can to try to get into good alignment. But if you've got pieces or tissues on your body, whether it's your muscles or your fascia, that's like pulling it out. And for many of us women, we have super tight hip flexor, like sets. Like we've got, if you've got that lumbar lordosis, like that super arched low back, chances are your hip flexors are pretty tight. And so it makes it significantly more challenging to maintain neutral just as you go about your day. You're going to be fighting against that tension that's wanting to pull you.
And I think that that's a really good point because like we said earlier, for many women, men tend to slump a little bit more and women tend to have this arch in our lower spine, and that makes our hip, it affects everything, right?
And what happens with the hip flexors in particular, when these get tight, and it happens a lot because we're sitting so much, so we're always in this like bent up position. as these get tight, they pull the front of your pelvis down. And so it kind of pulls you out of it. And now you have that low back arch. So those muscles, they're like pulling on the front. It's almost like you have this really heavy thing that's dangling on the front of your pelvis bones.
Yeah.
And what that does to the backside is it creates that arch at your low back.
Yeah.
And so you could go all day long trying to like get yourself level, but when this whole front set of muscles are so tight and tense and don't know how to release, it's you're fighting an uphill battle. It's really challenging.
Megan, is that associated with that psoas muscle? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. You have 7 different muscles in this whole area that act as a hip flexor, and the psoas is one of the largest ones.
Okay.
So your psoas is unique because that psoas, it's monster. It's really big and thick, and it actually attaches up on your spine inside. So you can't see it. It's on the inside of your lumbar. So all of your lumbar spinal segments are connected to the top of your psoas. That's where it's connected to. So when that psoas and the fascia around the psoas is so tight, it's actually not just pulling the front of your pelvis down, but it's pulling on your lumbar spinal segments too. And so there are so many women where I'm like, if we can release, and I know it sounds so weird, when we get low back pain, we're like, I gotta just stretch out my back. We do a million like child's poses, you know, we're like twist and stretch, and we're like just child's pose over and over and over again. The root of the pain is the fact that this front side of your hip is pulling on all those pieces. And so I'm like, let's stop stretching the back. Let's stretch your hips. And now we're going to feel that release that you're wanting.
Okay. So what are some of the things we had? So I had a couple of questions go through. Somebody was that, so how do we correct this if we've been doing this for so many years? And one of the people on here said that they use that upright buzzer. Have you seen that goes between the shoulder blades? Yeah. I don't know if that's addressing like anything.
It's just addressing the shoulder blades. And if we go back to what we learned just a minute ago of where posture begins, it's in the pelvis. So if you somehow were able to stick that on the back of your pelvis, like maybe that would be helpful. But really the beginning of back pain relief and hip pain relief is understanding how to move your pelvis and be in control of your pelvis. So pelvic tilt. So I say if there's anything people can walk away from our time together today is learning and understanding what a pelvic tilt is and how to do it. And you can do it in many ways. Think of like traditional, like the cat-cow movement, right? In yoga. So you've got your cat-cow movement. We're gonna get moving.
Yeah, I'm moving over here too.
So you've got your cat-cow movement. What you're doing, if you take your shoulders out of the equation and just do the lower half, what you're doing there is a pelvic tilt. Okay, so you've got anterior pelvic tilt, you've got a posterior pelvic tilt. And this is so helpful to learn how to only move the pelvis. And don't try to not push into your shoulders, like try to keep them really quiet and kind of disassociate your pelvis from your shoulders. Yeah. So think about tucking your tail between your legs and then arching your tail up to the sky and trying to only move that segment of your body. And that's really
just want to do, like, I want to do like the typical, like,
I know.
But no, we just want to focus on the movement of the pelvis.
We want to gain that like really good focus and neuromuscular control over just that spot of your body. Yeah. So you'll see that as you get stronger and have more signals going to that area, you'll be able, like if you watch me, like I can go like pretty far without my shoulders moving at all. And there's some people where I start to train and they're like, I can't move it more than that. Like there's barely any control there. So just starting to practice this is huge. And you can practice it on your hands and knees, just like that. Yep. So let's see if you can get a little bit more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yep. Yeah, and you'll probably notice when you're tucked, like in the tucked under position, that's a really magical spot to also kind of pull a Kegel contraction, like engaging the bottom.
It almost comes natural.
Right?
Yeah, when
it
you're
makes it
tucked
so much.
into to squeeze that Kegel area is almost natural.
Yes.
It almost
Yeah, it makes it so much more natural. It's really difficult to do with your arm, with your tail tipped out behind you, because that lengthens your pelvic floor, which is important as well. But when you tuck, that shortens your pelvic floor, gives you a good moment to engage the base of your core, which is that pelvic floor. And I like to do an exhale right in that moment. So go ahead. So we'll try that together. We'll try tucking under, feeling that pelvic floor engage, and then exhale, pushing the air out, 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 out. Keep pushing it out. And at that very last minute, you're going to really feel all of your core muscles engaging fully.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It almost feels like you're doing a bit of a crunch.
Like a little baby crunch. It's not like what we think of classically, like with full crunches, you know, where you've got a lot of like movement. A classic crunch, there's a lot of like spinal movement. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve just a little bit of pelvic movement, not a lot, but a little bit of pelvic movement, and then that coordination with that engagement of your core. So another great way to practice this is on your back.
Oh,
and doing
this is great, because we had a question that says, what if you can't get on your hands and knees?
You do it like this. Yeah.
Get on your back, folks. We can get on your backs. Okay, we'll try this way.
So you're going to get down on your back, and you're going to think about tucking your tail under. What I love about this is that when you get a tuck, you'll feel your back flatten down against the floor. So you get a really good feedback. So you'll feel your back press into the floor, and we can kind of try that Kegel contraction at the same time, and then add the exhale. And then you can release. And we're not trying to release so much that we're creating this crazy arch. We're just releasing the tilt. And then you'll tilt again, exhaling, and then release. So you kind of do it in coordination with your breath. Like each repetition is about the length of a good breath. And I will say that people that have a background in yoga are so much better at the breathing part of it.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but I did during the pandemic do a 500-hour teacher training. So,
Whoa.
And so it did. So when I got that question that came up about how do you, and I think it was Diamond, and I forgot the name, but we had the question that come up: how do you, after a lifetime of habit in your posture, change that? And it literally, you know, it is a lot of work to change a habit like that. Yeah. We've already talked about the upright, I think, works more for men than it does for women, because that's a different kind of posture than what women have. Yeah. But it took me into the 300 hours of the yoga teacher training before I'm like, oh, I now have a new way to stand, and I have a new way to sit. Yeah. But it's practice. It took a long time.
And that's the thing with a lot of like really good, like most of the ab workouts out there, like don't take the time to teach you this level of control and how to coordinate this and then this. And when you breathe, you get this, which is very complicated. So it kind of rushes past that. And unfortunately, a lot of kind of our traditional like ab exercises, you know, like this types of movements, and even that kind of movement, if you don't already have really good pelvis awareness and know how to engage your core, for most women, what you're going to do is just train your hip flexors. Right. Because if you think about it, like this is hip flexing. This is a lot of hip flexing. And for most women, we don't need that. Yeah. That's the problem, is that those are too tight. So we could talk about some good hip flexor stretches too, because it's kind of that combination. So maybe we could go through some good
flexors, you guys. Those are the things that give you, when you're doing things like you said, like the flutter kicks, and you're doing these leg lifts, it's a lot of hip flexors, which I call those the Abercrombie abs. You know, it's
yeah.
It's like the abs that go, you know.
And they're very advanced, because let me tell you this, that's an excellent exercise, a flutter kick. But what you have to be able to do is do what we were practicing earlier, that pelvic tilt where you feel your back connect into the floor. And when your legs lower, you need to be able to not let that pop up and arch. You have to be able to keep your low back pressed into the floor, maintaining that pelvic tilt the whole way down and the whole way up. It's very challenging to do.
That's a very different exercise than if you're not thinking of anything and you're just going up and down.
Yeah.
That's a very different exercise than when you're really tilting and then you're
usually once we add that tilt, most women are like, oh my gosh, I can barely lower my legs without my back lifting off the floor. It's like, that is a good indicator of how strong your core muscles actually are. And we got to roll it back and work on some of those fundamentals first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think are the top things that people should be doing to kind of help prevent that? And then I want to get into, what if if your back is out? What do you do?
Yeah. So preventing what exactly? What are you thinking of?
Like, is there a way, just for example, my back goes out every once in a while, which is a muscular thing down here. But if you're already in pain, and you're already experiencing hip pain, you're already experiencing back pain. There was somebody that just said, you know, what if you can't get down on your hands and knees? So we're looking at, you know, a lot of people are not on the same level due to injury, due to, you know, whatever it is. But if you're already in pain, what can you do to alleviate that? Say you're already in the middle of back pain. What do you do?
The most important thing to do is to be able to tell your tissues to relax. Most of the time, that muscle pain that you're experiencing is guarding and clenching. So your brain is telling those muscles to almost cramp and over cramp, like cramp so hard that it's creating spasms. And it's unnecessary. Like, there's no, if we were to put you through an MRI, like, there's no tissue damage there. It's just like contracting unnecessarily. It's like, it's just overreacting. And so often we need to put you in a position where we can get you comfortable. And for a lot of women, it's just laying on your back on the floor with your knees bent. Because if we extend the legs out, chances are it will make your low back arch. So just lay on your back with your legs bent, and you can do baby little pelvic tilts, like just tiny little tilts that can help lengthen the spine and release it just a little bit. So usually those feel really comfortable, and you can find like maybe just a tiny range of motion in that moment where it feels really good. And then we can also apply heat. Heat is what you want when you're experiencing spasms. What you apply to a tissue that's inflamed, and you had like this acute injury. So in this situation where you've got like this dull, achy, spasming thing, we want heat on the area, and it's going to help tell those tissues to just relax. And then the power of breathing. This comes back to that breathing thing. When you inhale and do long exhales, your brain starts to tell your muscles to release, to relax. So I will say, if you're not in a super painful moment, practice the breathing, because it will come in handy when you do have that. If your back goes out again, then you'll be able to be in control of the situation and not feel like this victim, like, I'm guarding and I'm clenching. And sometimes what we do in that movement or in that moment too is what's called fear aversion. So we stop moving and like we just are afraid, like we kind of lock up even more, and that kind of exacerbates the issue. So find a position where you can do some gentle movements, some gentle stretches that don't cause you to guard or clench. Sometimes like foam rolling or trigger point therapy is not the best idea in that situation, because it can make those muscles like react a little more, unless it's super gentle. You know, sometimes we're like, I just need someone to get their thumbs deep down inside there. It's like, you might need the opposite actually, to actually get those tissues to stop being so charged up.
What I've realized as well, Megan, is that when I know that it's a muscle thing, that standing on like a vibration plate, it really kind of helps to kind of loosen all of that stuff up.
Yeah, and what that might be doing too, more than anything, it's just sending some new signals to your brain to be like, hey, brain, chill it out. Like, stop telling these muscles to contract so hard. It's not necessarily like the muscles are getting jiggled and that's what's releasing it. It's just that the jiggling of those muscles are telling your brain to stop.
Just to relax. Yeah.
Right. Just relax. So, you know, our brain kind of is the it is the command center for everything. And in those moments, if you can have a little bit more control over what your brain is telling your body to do, you are no longer the victim of the situation. You now are in charge. You're in the driver's seat, and you can be like, okay, yes, I'm experiencing pain, but I know what I can do to like take care of it in this moment.
So if I had a question come up that said, are all of these are they safe for osteoporosis? I would assume so.
Yes.
And in fact, I'll have to scroll up to see who asked that about the osteoporosis. In fact, I'm doing a little bit of research. This is a little bit of off subject, but not really. When you're standing on a vibration plate, the research that I've found that gentle rebounding of a vibration plate, not only does it help to loosen things up and have us not clench, like Megan was saying, that will make it worse, but it loosens things up. But in addition to that, for the person who talked about osteoporosis, because there is a little bit of this GI force with the torque, you're actually adding gravity. So in a weight-bearing exercise for somebody who is suffering from osteoporosis, it's better to stand on a vibration plate, not even doing anything else, because it's adding gravity to your body, and it's working with balance and muscle control and all of that stuff, as opposed to standing on a straight floor. So there is a lot more involved with one of those vibration plates when it comes to muscle injury, but also in building bone density.
Yeah. In a common area that us women get the osteoporosis is, you know, definitely those arm and wrist bones, but the lumbar spine area is really susceptible to not just osteoarthritis, which is really normal and very common in those lumbar spinal segments, but the osteoporosis and just low bone density in general. So the number one thing you should be doing, if this is a concern, is strengthening those deep core muscles.
Right.
By doing that deep floor, like the deep breathing that we're talking about, where we're getting that internal core engagement, we're working on the pelvic floor, we do those pelvic tilts, we start to gain that control. What that's gonna do is it's gonna wrap those bones with muscle. And now those bones aren't so like just bone on bone and start to break down even more. And then we get that osteoarthritis in that spot. It gives them so much more of the soft support and structure. Plus, the more those bones pull, or the more muscles pull against the bone, it challenges that bone to lay down more bone structure. So more bone cells get applied in that area. So it's like so good on so many levels to be focusing on really good quality core strength for as long as into your 90s. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be doing like really good quality core exercises until I'm 99.
Until I'm
like
in the grave.
Non-negotiable.
I'm going to be exercising on the way to the grave.
Yeah. It's non-negotiable, because I just know, like, I don't know if you've ever been on a vacation where you just take a few days off. We should do that every so often to just give our minds a break. But like, my joints start talking to me and I'm like, what is this? Like, I got to get back into those movements. And I think there's a lot of women that don't get to experience first, like they're afraid to exercise because of the pain.
Right.
And they don't realize, like, we can trade this out. Like, we can, the more you move, the more you exercise, the more your pain goes away. And pretty soon that movement becomes your medicine.
Absolutely.
And like the best place to be.
Yeah, Megan, I'll actually take days off of exercise, what I would consider exercise.
Right.
But I never take days off of movement.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
I have intentional movement because it's not just the muscle mass, like we said earlier. It's not just the muscle mass that we lose as we get older and our bones get less dense, but we lose that flexibility as well. So the flexibility plus the muscle mass and the strength equals mobility. That's our ability to move around in space as we get older. And that's so very important. Okay, so there were some other things that we wanted to talk about. The simple strategies to immediately eliminate pain when they feel it. Was that the pelvic tilt that we were talking about?
That's going to be that pelvic tilt. I can give you a stretch too that seems to be really helpful for a lot of people that get that pain. It's just a good glute squeeze can release a lot of this tension on your back. So just holding the back of your thigh can be really helpful. That can feel really good. Whether the other leg is bent up or extended down, but this can sometimes release some of that pressure you feel down your low back. But then another stretch that I do recommend for those that can get down on their knees is doing a basic hip flexor stretch. And I can demonstrate this standing as well. So
I'll do it on my knees if you do it standing.
Okay, so yeah, so basically you've got, let me show the kneeling one. And this is where understanding how to pelvic tilt is really important, because if you're trying to get a hip flexor stretch back to those like super tight hip muscles, if you're just like dumping and like, oh, I gotta go this far to feel that stretch in your pelvis, like you're just not gonna get a good quality stretch. So I always say start perfectly vertical, do a pelvic tilt, like tuck your tail under in that position. Chances are you probably feel like you don't have to go very far, like a tiny press to feel those muscles.
That is a completely different sensation.
Yeah.
So if you do this and you dump into this,
yeah.
When I dump into this, I'm feeling the stretch on my hamstring here. Yes, I'm feeling some stretch around my hip flexor here. But a little adjustment you just did, which was to first tilt the pelvis forward. So you're doing that pelvis tilt. I can already feel this.
Right.
In that psoas, in that hip flexor, and then you barely have to move, and it's already a really great stretch.
Yeah, you're basically just manipulating the angle of your own bones to pull you into the stretch, which is phenomenal. And then what we can intensify even more by squeezing this glute on the back side. So it's amazing and that's another trick if you're in constant pain, is to just go like try to squeeze your glutes. When you squeeze that glute, like, whoa, there it is.
Yeah. I hope you guys at home are doing this, because it's really shocking. You know, when somebody says to stretch or to do this kind of stretch, and you can just passively dump into this.
Right.
And it's not even close to the same as if we did what Megan just suggested, which was first do that pelvic tilt and then squeeze the buttocks.
Yep.
I can already feel this down the whole front of the leg.
You don't even have to move.
You don't even have to move.
Yeah.
You really don't even have to.
To keep it moving a little bit, I like to think about, okay, now that we've got that pelvis anchored, let's use that glute squeeze to push forward a little bit and then release. Push forward a little bit and release, but keeping it almost like it's your glute that's like pushing you into it. It's super powerful. And somebody who's experiencing low back pain, that can right there like almost immediately eliminate it.
Really?
Yeah, it's very powerful because it pulls the compression out of your lumbar spine. It gets your glute engaged, and we're releasing the front of your pelvis, which is often the source of that pain.
Wow. That is like a whole, listen, I've been doing yoga for a long time. I'm 55 years old. I've been exercising, I think, since I came out of the womb. that just changed what I'm going to be doing when I experience lower back pain. Because my gut tells me, which again, sometimes we listen, sometimes we need to listen to our bodies, and sometimes we need to give our bodies another option.
Yeah.
And what I have been doing forever is when I get the lower back pain, sorry, I'm just going to adjust you a little bit. When I get the lower back pain, my spine, because I know it has the muscle spasms and going on. What feels good is when I round, and punch over, and to touch my toes. This feels so good to me when I'm experiencing lower back pain. It doesn't make the pain go away.
No,
it's only in that moment.
Yeah.
So to incorporate what Megan was saying is completely counterintuitive to what our body would tell us to do.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense. And I mean, I can picture exactly what that's doing to my lumbar spine.
Yeah.
It's just completely different. Okay, what else do you got? Because that was a big one.
Let me show you how to do that hip flexor stretch standing, because I know there's a lot of women where whether they've had knee replacements or just a bad knee, it's hard to get down on the floor. So it's very powerful standing. Can you see my head? Am I cutting my head off?
You're cutting from your shoulders up. We don't see your shoulders.
Okay, let me adjust then. Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm learning so much. Good. I hope you guys are learning something too, because this is like these are real little tricks that you're going to be able to incorporate to alleviate your pain. I'm all excited about this. Okay, go on.
We're going to just mimic that same stretch that we did when you were down on the knee. We're going to plant one foot up on the chair, and I've got a spinny chair. I don't recommend doing this on a spinny chair.
I have a spinny chair too.
Yeah. But we can accomplish the same thing if we go through. So I just have one foot down on the floor, one foot up on the chair. We want to go through the same things, right? We got to tuck the tailbone under, squeeze that glute, and now press that hip forward using your glute to press it forward. We're going to get the same stretch.
Yeah.
So super doable for anybody that can't get down on the floor, or if you need to do it while you're at work, like you're standing in your office, just stand up every 30 minutes and do this stretch, and it can completely alleviate a lot of that tight hip and back pain.
So if you're having back pain in your desk chair, get up off your ass and use your desk chair to alleviate your pain. Yeah. I have to do it on the other side, or else I'm going to feel lopsided. So, okay. So flip yourself up.
So
I tilt the pelvis under, because normally this would be my stance, right?
Yeah. Pelvis under, glute is squeezed really tight, and you're just going to like gently press the hip bone forward without leaning back. You're not trying to lean back. You're just pressing that hip bone forward, feeling the stretch, and then ease off of it. And I do like to keep it dynamic, so kind of pushing in and then releasing, and then pushing in and releasing, because that's where we can get true mobility. Because sometimes when you find like that deep end range of motion, where you like hold it for a long, hard time, sometimes our body will start guarding in that position because it's uncomfortable. Yeah. And so you're like, oh, this is a really tight stretch. And so when you're stretching, either try to keep it very mobile, like ease in and off, or just hold a stretch for a breath count, not a time count. I know we've been told so much, like hold your stretches for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, but you could be sitting there like guarding the whole time.
That's right. And what Morgan means Megan means by guarding is that like your muscles are so worried that you're going to get injured that it's clenching with all of its might. And so if we can consciously get them to release a little bit, but also don't think that we need to hold everything forever.
Yeah.
Dynamic movement.
Yeah. And honestly, like that's what we're trying to condition our body to do, is to move better, to move more efficiently. So any opportunity you have to do a stretch where you can move through it, even though like that's a pretty small range of motion, that's not like a gigantic yoga move, you know, where you're doing all this crazy stuff. Like we're maybe only moving a few degrees.
Yeah.
But that is really powerful in that moment. Yeah.
It is. Okay. And then we have the 6 abs. So I'm looking at like a little outline that I had. the 6 absolute best core exercises for women of all stages of life.
Yes.
This is big. The 6 best core exercises. Let's go through them.
Let's start with the top. We talked about breathing. Okay. It starts there because if you have good belly breathing, and I like to say, place your hands, and I can kind of tuck up so you can kind of see. So place your bottom rib, like your thumb on your bottom rib, and then your fingers across everything else. And then as you breathe in, everything like contracts. And we have something in us that's like so anti making our belly bulge, but you gotta trust me on this. You gotta allow your belly to bulge. Like pretend you're pregnant, like really push it out.
Yeah, especially as women. When was the last time that we had to like, hey, stick your stomach out as much as you can?
Yeah, stick it out. Let it lengthen and let your pelvic floor lengthen. And then as you exhale, everything contracts in on itself. So what we're doing is this like internal engagement of all of your core muscles on the inside of your abdominal cavity. That is like square one. Like everybody, I don't care how old you are, what condition you're in, you can practice breathing every day. Then after that, it's the pelvic tilt. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
Very powerful core exercise. Every other core exercise, like kind of assumes that you have to know that. Like we talked about like those flutter kicks. If you don't know how to do the pelvic tilt, you're not going to do a flutter kick.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Same with a plank. So those are kind of like the first 2. And then the third one is a bridge. Okay. So on the back side.
I love it.
So we want to, because remember, your core is 3-dimensional. It's not just the front. The glutes are so important for good, strong core. Making sure that when you bridge, you're getting a glute squeeze first. We want to tell those muscles to turn on. And then push your hips up, but not so much that we arch. You got to stop below the arch. So right there.
Below the arch.
Yeah. We don't want to arch. You don't want to think with a bridge, like push as high as I can. Yeah. And to prevent that overarch, you can even do a pelvic tilt. Like sometimes I like to do it if my back really hurts. I will do a pelvic tilt first and then push up into the bridge.
So pelvic tilt.
Pelvic tilt first. Yep.
Almost like you're peeling off the mat from your tailbone.
Yeah.
Up.
Yeah. And then push.
That's how you would explain it in yoga. So it'd be like you tuck your tailbone under.
Tuck it under.
That starts your lower back to hit the mat flat.
Yep.
Tuck the tailbone under and peel up one vertebrae at a time.
Yeah.
And don't arch, but come to the point where you're flat. And you should feel that through the front of the thigh. Yeah. Well, the buttocks as well, because
and it's those glutes. It's your glutes on the backside that are doing the work here, and it's just one of the. This is a very powerful movement to strengthen your core and ultimately alleviate back pain. So those are kind of like the big 3. Those are the first 3. Is like that good belly breathing, the basic tilt, and then the bridges. So we got to master those, and then from there. A bird dog is actually really helpful. So this is where we start to bring in some balance and coordination. And once again, pelvic tilt, right? We want to make sure that you're not too arched.
I want to see what you're doing first, Megan, so I can. Okay. So you're in a cat cow.
Yeah, and I will show you how to do a bird dog without getting on your knees in just a second, because I know a lot of people are like, but I can't do that. Yes, you can. Okay, so we're going to make sure that you're not arched or rounded. We're going to find the midpoint. We're going to pull the belly in. Now we know how to do that with our breath. And then we're going to extend opposite, straight forward and back. So most people, when they do a bird dog, they try to lift as high as they can. This is not a lift. This is a push forward, push back type of a thing. Okay, so
we're going to opposite arms, opposite legs.
And you're going to try to almost touch your heel to the back wall. Push your heel out hard. You don't want to point your toe. You want to flex your foot really hard. And that's going to make a difference in your glute. And then really extend your fingers forward as far as you can. And you're going to feel your core like just wrap around your spine.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'll want to switch.
And that's a really good core exercise to do as you age. I'm going to do the other side, but then we're going to figure out how to do it in case people have bad knees and they can't get down on the floor. But I always like to make my everything even, so I'm going to do the other side.
There you go. So don't lift quite so high. Drop it down just a little. There you go. And then push your left heel back as hard as you can. There you go. And I like to think about pulling my belly up to my spine while I'm in that position and like exhaling hard. And you'll really feel that stability wrapping through your body.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would you
do that without having to get down on the floor? So once again, we're going to use that chair. And so you're just going to find a tabletop. You can use the edge of your bed. So we're just finding that tabletop position. And we're going to go through the same thing, making sure that you're not arching or rounding at your back. We're going to get it nice and flat. I have a floppy shirt, so you really can't see. So pulling your belly in. And then once again, we're extending one arm, extending one leg, doing the same thing, pushing that heel back really hard. That's another trainer trick. The more you push your heel out, the more you turn that glute on, by the way. So, yep, so we can do that standing. Easy peasy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. There's always a way when it comes to exercise, whether you're injured or not, no matter what your age is, there is a way to get it done. There's so many accommodations.
Yeah.
And you just have to, you can't come in with a defeated mindset.
Right.
That it's not in your wheelhouse. It is. We just need to alter it a little bit. And I love this alteration.
Yeah.
This works
for so many things too. Like if you're trying to learn that pelvic tilt on your hands and knees, just do it here. And honestly, I really like it like this too, because you can get a bit of a hamstring stretch at the same time. And that just feels so good when you're doing this pelvic tilt with both feet down. It's just really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
love it.
Is a good bird dog because we're adding a little bit of that balance component, coordination component. Then we've got the classic plank. You know, everybody has seen planks, but this is so good too. And I will say that we got to understand that pelvic tilt.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing your plank like this, you better just stop.
Right.
Okay. So we want to make sure that your tailbone is tucked under and then you lower into position. Okay. Yep. So kind of tucking that tailbone under and then kind of lowering those hips down. This is another one where I like to say push your heels back as hard as you can. And that's going to fire up all of the muscles down your legs, making your legs sturdier. It's going to make your whole core kind of zip up and feel really firm, like it's actually working properly and you're not just hanging on your joints.
Yeah. And with that pelvic tuck under, I don't think I had my position wrong, sorry. But with that pelvic tuck under, you know, you see people doing planks and they're up here, right? And so, but when you
that's a flexor plank. You want to, if you want to do a hip flexor plank where you're only working your hip flexors, get your butt up in the air. But nobody should be doing that. So you want to tuck your tailbone and then lower it down and squeezing those glutes. If you squeeze your glutes really hard, pushing your heels back, whoa, you're going to really feel like that plank is like the quality of that plank is just like chef's kiss, like just so good.
100%. You're just so much more solid. And I think that a lot of people, when they think about doing a plank, they're not thinking about the pelvic tilt and squeezing that core. Yeah. They're just, they you know, a lot of people that I work with as well, they'll just kind of, they sink into it. Much like we were talking about earlier, sinking into this as opposed to the pelvic tilt and then barely going. A lot of people, when I see them doing a plank, they're up here and they're sinking into their shoulders and they're just holding on for dear life. But if you push out through the shoulders and you tilt that and then squeeze the butt and push through the heels, that is a much more solid foundation.
It 100% is. And what's interesting about that is that often people will be like, well, oh my goodness, the moment I try to do it properly, I'm realizing I don't have the strength to do it properly. And that's why I was hanging on my joints so much. So once again, guess what? The chair, we can elevate again.
I love it.
Yeah. So I highly recommend practicing up on a chair or even your countertop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much more effective, and then you can really feel what you're trying to work there. And then the final core exercise, you know, I told you I would tell you 6. If all of that's going well and you've got really great control, another great thing to do is like a chopping lift, like just like a dumbbell, and you're just, and this looks reminiscent of our hip flexor stretch, right? So the same idea there. You get your tailbone tucked under, glute is tight, you're locked in through your core, and we're actually trying to not twist. The point is to not rotate. The point is to move the weight in a rotational pattern, but you're having to brace your core so hard that it's not twisting.
Okay, so does everybody get that? Let me go facing the camera. So when you're in this position, which we had just done, this tucked in position, when you're doing this, moving side to side, your body should not waver at all. And even doing that without a weight could be challenging for people to keep core stable, but you're never going to know unless you try, right?
You can eventually, you know, try to add a little bit of a resistance band to it. Start out really gentle, but really your core's primary job is to resist movement. Yeah. And so many traditional sorry.
I love that. He like slid in there with a downward facing dog.
Guys with you now. But your core, okay, dude, now you're just getting obnoxious. Your core's primary job is to like not move. Yeah. Like that's what it can. But the number one thing it should be able to do is to brace and to hold steady. And so we have all these opportunities to train it like that, like lock in, brace, like be firm so that everything else can move with good function. Well,
I would love to have you back on, Megan, because I want to talk about shoulders. Yeah. There's so many things that like happen, and we're a little bit out of time, but like a rotator cuff tear is one of the most common injuries when we get older because we stop, you know, reaching for things and we have a little shoulder pain and we kind of stop doing things. So, you know, just because you're injured or you have a little pain doesn't mean you stop, because that's just going to make it worse. Exactly. You got to move through it. Yeah.
Move through it. We got to keep those muscles stimulated. And honestly, as women that are getting older, like the number one thing in our minds should be like, what can I do to hold on to my muscle the best way at all costs? Because that just, you know, and that like dictates how you sleep. It dictates how you eat. It dictates how you move, because you just know like how do I want to function when I'm 95 years old? And what can I do right now to make sure that I'm, you know, a fun Instagram meme as a 95-year-old? I'm one of those ladies on the videos like, oh my gosh, look what she's able to do as a 95-year-old. Like what you do today matters.
Yes, you're preaching to the choir here. I say that all the time. Like if I could reach through the camera and say, you guys, wake up. Like, and there's something that you can do every day, and what you're doing or the lack of what you're doing is going to determine how you're feeling, how you're functioning, and even how you're looking when you're like 95 or 100 years old. Yeah. You have a choice today, but you're never too young to think about getting old. Yeah. And you're never too old to start. You can start right now in wherever you are. We have a lot of different, you know, special accommodations and that kind of stuff. You can start wherever you are, but I would really love to have you back on and talk about shoulders and things like that. So we'll get
like shoulders and knees. I feel like shoulders and knees are kind of like, like we kind of talked about like the midsection, right? We did this part. We did this part. Let's do like above and below.
Yeah, we did lower section today. We talked about back pain. We talked about hip pain. But next time I have you on, I'd love to talk about shoulder. I'd love to talk about neck, because a lot of people are, having neck and shoulders and knees. We can talk about that as well. So tell everybody how we can find you.
Well, definitely come follow me over on Instagram. I got a lot going on over on my channel. I'm posting some phenomenal tutorials, and people, what they appreciate about my videos is that I explain things really, really simply. So it feels like, oh my gosh, I can actually do that. That makes so much sense. And then I have an amazing podcast that I encourage everyone to listen to. It's called Care Simplified. You can find it on any app that you listen to. We actually just hit in the top charts of all health and fitness podcasts. We hit a big accomplishment, and on Tuesday is going to be our 300th episode. So we're feeling pretty excited about that. Yeah. So those are some great ways. And then if someone is looking for a really good, like, core training resource, like what we talked about today, they're like, oh my gosh, everything you said resonated with me. I realize I'm not training my core properly. I have a free 5-day core tune-up. If they just go to 5daycore.com, just the number 5daycore.com, all one word, they can get that for free.
I love it. We love free stuff on this channel. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you so much. I'm going to post this to my main feed. Megan, if you'd like to be a collaborator, I'll put you as a collaborator so you can go on your feed as well.
I would love to share this.
And then we'll schedule the next one for it's like, what was that? Head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
I know.
Next time it's going to be neck, shoulders, knees, right? All right. Thank you guys, everybody. Thank you so much, Megan. Okay. Bye.